And we are live with Interchain Live. This is Ryan Munn. I've got Alan Wahlberger, Dr. Alan Wahlberger. And
I'm Lionel Wahlberger.
Sorry, my bad. All right. Hey, this is real, right? So please introduce yourselves with Platin, a proof of location blockchain project. I'm really excited to explore with you guys. But please, Lionel, introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Lionel Wahlberger, and I'm leading the technical aspects of Platin. My job is to formulate the technical vision and evangelize. Our vision is to bring location credentials and proximity really to make digital assets real. And we're very passionate about it. We have deep roots in the privacy space and in sovereignty. So we're really interested in digital dignity and living our full lives with these amazing tools that we have. And
Awesome.
Of course, the newest addition is blockchain.
Awesome. And Alan, if you will, please introduce yourself and your background.
Hi, my name is Alon Mason. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Platin. And one small thing Lionel forgot to mention is that he's also a co-founder of Platin. Yes. So I'm just taking care of day-to-day business, and we are pre-ICO right now, so we're quite busy with preparing for our big TGE event, October 28th.
Awesome.
And I've been lucky enough to be able to found this company with Lionel and work closely with him, and it's been extremely interesting and challenging every day. And we have a lot of interesting announcements and great progress to share. So
excellent.
Thank you for having us on this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And so so people want to start checking it out and just hop on their website. They can pull up platin.io and take a look at the countdown for your ICO. I want to hear a little bit more, though, about you guys. How did you guys meet? How did you guys get started?
Lionel, do you want to take a shot at this one?
Sure. Alon and I go way back because we're both Cornell alumni, and we've been friends for a long time. We hang out at Cornell alumni events, and we've kind of we had a parallel journey for a very long time in the technological industry. I frankly was an admirer of what Alon achieved with his previous startups. He has one called Xplace with like $72 million annual turnover. It's where contractors and vendors meet. It's a marketplace that he raised with his own two hands, and I got to see him do that over the years. He's actually a well-known personality here in Israel because literally hundreds of thousands of people use his site and find their livelihood. So we were at one of those Cornell events drinking beer, and meanwhile the blockchain revolution happened, and I didn't actually realize that Alon was a Bitcoin fanatic. He hadn't spoken about it. I personally was already involved in blockchain. I was lucky to actually become chair of a blockchain identity committee early on for the OASIS standard. And I know the cryptographers who are very involved with it. So my interest was always very much on this amazing new insight. You can have a decentralized, immutable ledger. They call it trustless, but I don't love that word. We don't have a better word, but it really means no previous trust. Anyone can pick it up, and it actually builds in its own trust mechanisms, but you know better than I do. Anyway, so we were talking, and Alon was suddenly revealed how much he was into the space, and we had a conversation that basically led to the founding of Platin.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and it looks like you guys have an amazing team there. Alan, why don't you give me a little bit of your side or any additional details that you have on that story?
Yeah, so at the time before Platin was founded, I had taken the previous platform that Lionel had mentioned from my previous company, Xplace, and I had basically duplicated that for the AR and VR world. So it was a platform that was focused on connecting experts and projects in AR and VR. And that was a passion that I had for quite a while: augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality. But since actually 2013, early 2013, when Bitcoin was at around $70 or $80, I really started being intrigued by it. And I sort of forgot about it. Back in early 2013, I tried to understand what mining is and how it works, and I downloaded a full node. And I even tried buying some Bitcoin through Coinbase back then. But it was a very difficult and rugged process. It wasn't very smooth, and there was quite a learning curve around learning how to use and understanding basically the fundamentals of what Bitcoin is and how it works. And I forgot about it for a few years, and then obviously it started picking up tremendously in 2017 as a result of Ethereum and ICOs and new coins being born like almost on a daily basis. And I really wanted to combine my passions of AR and VR and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I realized that there are a few basic issues and problems with the way Bitcoin currently operates. The first one is the usability aspect. Not a lot of people understand exactly how it works. What a cold storage wallet is, how to handle like a private key and a public key, and how all these things come together. And just trying to explain it to my mom, I realize there's a real big problem, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing mass adoption with it. There's the regulatory issue of countries and governments regulating it and turning it into something more formal, but it has to also come from the bottom up, and it didn't really have the impact that I expected it would have had. So that was one issue which really bothered me, because I became a true believer in cryptocurrencies, and I wanted to spend everything that I spend on a daily basis, whether it's for groceries or paying rent or my mortgage, I want to be able to use cryptocurrencies for that. I'm just a big believer in that vision. The second thing was the idea of mining. It really intrigued me that everybody can partake. Everybody can save a copy of the ledger and contribute to the network. But it had become very, very centralized, like Bitmain and these other big companies investing millions and tens of millions of dollars in mining farms and ASICs. And it turns out that your individual or some random guy with a phone or a PC or a few $1,000s cannot really make an impact on mining. And it became less democratized than I think what the original vision was, and that kind of created this.
I hate to interrupt you, Alone, but it's good to see you too. Do you still see Alone, Ryan?
Yeah, it does look like the video froze, but I think
video froze
in a second here.
I'm sorry. Okay, let me reset my camera. Sorry about that.
Sure. Yeah. No worries. We heard you though, so that was great.
Yeah,
and I really, I think that's really the crux of it is that while we've had so much progress with Bitcoin, there's almost a little bit of a elitism being reborn in that, like, oh well, if you can't handle this complicated stuff, then leave it to the smart people. And it's like, well, that doesn't get you adoption, that doesn't get you a successful implementation. And so it's really important that we recognize that that's the beauty of open source, is that we all get to continue building, expanding, trying new things and experimenting, so that we get the results from those experiments in order to discover how to proceed best. And
That's
so,
right, Ryan. And a lot of the revolutions that happen these days come from just lower friction. The services that we use all the time, the big GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they dedicate themselves to lowering friction and simple changes like moving a button closer or, auto type as you're typing. These little changes cause big changes because they can suddenly cause a technology to be taken up. And Alone had this passion around cryptocurrency and AR, VR, MR, XR. We all know that AR will really transform the world, but just happening a little bit slowly because the glasses aren't comfortable. You have the little square in the middle.
Right.
And when we were at that Cornell alumni event, we were actually on a yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean. But he started explaining how he wanted people to touch the coins. And that's interesting enough, but he suddenly said the word location. And for some reason, that little change, that it's about location, that's what blew my mind, because we all think that location is a GPS signal on our phone, but because of my background in Cisco Secure Video, I know that location is a very difficult problem because of the ability to replay signals and relay signals. It's very hard to rely on timing. And I personally was involved in a project in China, and it was extremely difficult to get a secure location claim.
Well, we're never in the same place, ever.
That's right. We're always moving around. And suddenly I realized that these innovations of peer-to-peer witnessing and incentivization and microcurrency, basically, what blockchain and cryptocurrencies enable, can enable us to reach a new level of proximity claims. And this is actually the right moment to build Alon's vision. We can make coins that you can actually touch, pick, and make it simple.
So it sounds like you're describing an aha moment. And I like to just diverge slightly for a second here. I like to joke about what I call the duh moment, because I hear people all the time going, when did you have your aha moment about Bitcoin and blockchain? And I'm like, no, no, no. What you guys just described was an aha moment for your business. The Bitcoin blockchain thing to me is kind of like, it's a duh moment. Like, oh, duh, why didn't I get this earlier, right? So I'm curious, did you have that moment? Did you guys have that moment where like you'd heard about Bitcoin blockchain a little bit and then something happened, you're like, oh, why didn't I connect that before? Like,
wow. That's a good one.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure that I personally had a moment like that exactly the way you described it, but I think the closest thing might have been, why didn't I get in earlier? You know, why? Like, I consider myself an early adopter of many types of technologies, but I wasn't an early adopter enough to start in 2009, 10,
Sure.
11. Right, so like I had to wait to read about it on Engadget or Gizmodo or some other like mainstream online media, and that's a shame. So that's like my moment where I feel like I sort of missed out on those really early years of buying Bitcoin when it was like a fraction of a cent or something. So.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And Lionel, any similar kind of moment where you just kind of went, oh man, why did it take me so long to figure it out?
The duh moment for me was just the Merkle tree, the brilliance of using. I mean, we all know hashing. We've been hashing. There's checksums on packets for forever, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But Satoshi, whoever he was, I think I know who he is. His insight that when you use this hashing to make an immutable ledger, that like, oh my, why didn't I think of that? That's amazing. That's really, I guess that was my duh moment.
Awesome. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think it's just one of those things. I actually use an anecdote that I gained from my experience in the State House here, where we had a former police commissioner testify to how the data for the evidentiary log is maintained, which for decades now, they take the existing record set that has a hash. They take that hash, include it with the new record they're adding, and they hash it again to have a new blockchain hash, right? And the only thing that makes it not really a blockchain is that if you're smart enough and you have, the hours between 4 and 7 when nobody's hanging around the precinct, you can go in there and you could rehash the entire thing and just change the ledger, and nobody would know the difference because they think they can rely on that hashing. But the difference would be
because that's centralized and they don't have redundant copies.
Exactly. So the difference would be actually communicating that with all precincts so that they're continually cross-hashed in a way that would implement blockchain. And so that's where that was actually, so years later, right? This was 2018 that I really had that duh moment where I was like, man, it always occurred to me that we've had this technology for a while. Like, why haven't we done this before? But when he said that, and I went, man, that's the duh moment, because there is a conflict of interest to a lot of centralized power structures to implementing that, right? Because now there's really all kinds of...
What you said, I just want to emphasize that we had this technology for a while, right? So if you look at Satoshi's white paper, a lot of the elements that he describes there, the innovation is in combining them. It's not that any of the elements in and of themselves. So,
a couple of syllables on you alone there. And stop me if we're going too far, but I love your question. There's another dumb moment, and it's related. It goes back to, everyone uses private keys and public keys, and we don't think a lot about that. But that was the moment in the 70s when Adi Shamir invented that. He literally discovered that. And that, once you hear that, oh, 2 prime numbers, it's hard to factor prime numbers, just use it as the exponent. I mean, some people get very intimidated by the math, but it's really, a 5th grader.
Right.
Can
we're in 50 years of this technology now.
That's right.
We've just managed to get the grassroots power behind actually implementing this technology. And that's what's really bringing it to the surface. It's not that like, oh, if this was so smart, why didn't we do it before? It's that, this is so smart. That's why we didn't do it before, because the institutions that were, potentially challenged or jeopardized by this really didn't have an incentive. There's no reason, there's no benefit to them to implement these things. So
and that puzzle that ID solved, that was a puzzle that stood for 2,000 years, without exaggerating. Julius Caesar was doing cryptography. Hannibal was doing cryptography. Adolf Hitler.
The Silk Road was based on, basically
Right.
having a codified ledger they could travel around, and the emperor could know that his accounts were balanced.
Right. And so then we have this new invention of public key cryptography, and 50 years is nothing for us to really, embody it and get our heads around it as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, how. So you guys met through the Alumni Association, and then how did Platin really get off the ground for you guys?
Yeah, I think we started putting together some ideas in PowerPoint and describing it. And one of the first things I did was to convey the concept of what it means to geolocate a digital asset or Bitcoin somewhere in the world. I started putting together a script for a video that I wanted to create. So with a very low budget initially, we wanted just to create like an explainer video. And so that was one of the first things, and sort of that explainer video gave rise to additional discussions and and provoked thoughts. And then we started asking ourselves a lot of questions about security. Okay, so it's very easy to spoof your location, and if you're dealing with Bitcoin and assets, digital assets that have tremendous value, you can't just copy paste a Bitcoin and duplicate it like you can a Pokemon Go monster or any other digital asset for that matter. We really started delving into issues of security, and we realized that there's a hard problem here that we have to solve. How do we solve the problem of location spoofing? And I remember speaking with Lionel about this in Platin's early days, and one of his initial reactions was, what if we're too reliant on GPS satellites, and then the US military can do some manipulation with GPS satellites? That's still not good enough. And so we started thinking about what is like the ultimate type of location security we would need to make this work and make it robust. And soon after that, we attended the cryptographic seminar, which was a 5-day seminar at the Technion in Haifa, here in Israel, where we met some of the world's leading cryptographers working at the Technion.
That was the critical experience, Ryan, because I mentor at the Technion, I lead research there, and that summer, one of the world's leading crypto analysts, Dr. Ali Biham, decided to dedicate his annual technical seminar to blockchain. So Vitalik flew in, Zuko flew in, all kinds of leaders in the field, and we spent a week over Israeli dinners and Technion lectures. And that's when we developed the security oracle, basically, of Platin, the 3 pillars, which is how we would ensure that Platin's location protocol could be secure enough to deal with real valuable assets.
Awesome. Hey, is there actually, do you happen to know roughly where in your white paper I could refer to those 3 pillars? Do you guys have an image for that?
Search for a pillar.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let me.
You're going to get along going. He's really into powerful images, but I don't think we have an actual image of 3 pillars. I guess we're going to have one tomorrow.
Right. No, look, there you go. All right. Hey, this is what progress is about, right? You get some conversations. Actually, it looks like page 52. Let me find it here real quick.
Okay.
See if it gets into the details, or if you got a picture.
They're orthogonal. They support and work. Yeah, there it was. I saw the 3 pillars. Yeah. So the first one is sensor. Sensor fusion means what can I sense, and this is what everybody generally thinks of. GPS. You can see the initials GNSS there, which is the more general term for GPS satellites. And today, other nations are raising their own GPS, and our advisory board. Our advisors are all involved with the Galileo effort to raise new secure GPS. And we have all kinds of GPS. But GPS and cell towers, by the way, cell towers will also be a lot more helpful as we move into 5G because there'll be more of them. Wi-Fi is becoming more helpful for location because you're getting RSS standards where you can actually locate in relation to your Wi-Fi. All of that is sensor fusion. And by the way, it can include sound detection as well. But all of that can be replayed. You can put a sensor and replay those things. So we don't stop there. We then add second layer, which is behavior over time. Fine, you're telling me, according to all your sensors, that you're located in Vermont. But where were you an hour ago? An hour ago, you were in the Ukraine. You know,
Right.
so that's weird. How'd you do that? So behavior over time is a completely separate dimension. And here we partner with the privacy-preserving behavior over time analytics and anomaly detection called Zane, and it's described there on the page in front of you. And then now those two, even that, you could curate over time a behavior over time that looks real. So we have the third and most powerful pillar, which is the peer-to-peer witnessing. And here, that's like when you said, let's release this evidence record to other peers.
Right.
You're not only collecting, but you're sharing with other peers. Peers see if they can see you. Then you can say you're in Vermont, but if somebody sees you in the Ukraine, that's a problem.
Right. Right. Awesome. Now, is there kind of a security component to this too? So like, even though somebody's seeing you in Vermont, is it really just that they're validating your other reporting that's where you were without necessarily saying where it is, but saying, yes, all of these things sort of corroborate? Or is there a sort of reporting of actual location happening?
So it's really cool because you just hit on two different kinds of witnessing, but the more powerful one is the second one that you said, where we actually witness your node. I mean, you think about it, we could even do an audio tweet. So our two phones could chirp, and then I actually witness that you chirped.
Right.
And that's extremely difficult to spoof.
Right. And my laptop could witness that I chirped, and if I had a smart microwave, it might witness it too.
Right. Your smart home speakers. And all of this, and pardon me for, I keep going because I'm very passionate about this. I want to point out that all this can sound very invasive all of a sudden. Look, I'm observing you, your microwave's observing you, everything's observing you. So really going to point out, we are baked in privacy from the beginning. What you're really sharing is what we call commitments. You share commitments. And a commitment can be opened up and it doesn't really say anything about you. It only can be analyzed through a zero knowledge proof or some way when we need to really determine if you are valid for this location claim. So I just wanted to throw that in there. We're not interested in surveillance at all, the opposite. We're interested in using these innovations to make a system where you can declare your location in return for a valuable asset, or declare your location to sign up for a financial service. One of our partnerships right now, it's a financial services company, and they say they have online abandonment of 80%, an 80% rate of non-completion of sign up. Why? Because they say prove where you live, and the only way you can do that today is by finding a utility bill that matches your driver's license, and that's just a lot of people today. People live in shared housing. People live in, I mean,
yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, we talk about in the crypto space, you know, there's all, especially in the United States, there's all this stuff around KYC and AML. And at the end of the day, you know, yeah, I get we have to comply and we have to make these things work, but at the end of the day, we're going backwards, right? We're checking those things through legacy systems, and really we're all centralized. And so what we really need are platforms and solutions that allow us to authenticate in a decentralized manner without going through an authority that could be corrupted or could use that information in the future under some corruption to then target or persecute. We need real decentralized validation and authentication.
It's not only that, it's that it's just too easy to spoof those things as well. So even if, you know, the central authority, let's say your utility bill is legit and everything is okay, it's so easy to Photoshop. And even then, you know, you're relying on something that is really kind of low tech and manual and takes time, and so it's not immediate. And there are solutions today around identity management that are trying to solve some aspects of that. And in terms of location, Platin today is becoming the leading player around a secure technology that will allow location verification securely, address verification securely, and so on.
Awesome. So if you would, let's get into what kind of milestones you guys have hit in the past 6 months or so. I'm going to pull up your roadmap here too.
So this is an exciting time for us. First of all, we've moved forward on the standardization layer. We're basing our claim on a W3C standard, which we chose because the W3C is the World Wide Web itself. You're using the World Wide Web right now to look at our white paper. We're using the World Wide Web to talk. Whenever people use their smartphones and all those apps, those work on the World Wide Web. So our location credential standard is moving forward quite nicely, and we've released a paper this week showing our progress there. It has the status of a report in the World Wide Web consortium. Very soon, we're finalizing our yellow paper, which describes the zero knowledge protocol that we're using, and we're going to release that as a free and open source license. So we're completing that soon. Soon after that, we're releasing the Solidity Geo language, which allows geographic claims on the blockchain. Are these all in those bubbles alone?
Yeah, I think almost all of them are, and it's very cool that you're focusing on the technical aspects as well. So
that's
really
what I always focus on.
those.
Sorry.
When I think of milestone, I think both of the technical ones, but also of the business ones. And so one of the first big milestones was the Technion engagement. And the second one, we were selected by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, along with IOTA and Factum and several other blockchains earlier this year, January to March 2018, to participate in the Japanese Blockchain Accelerator. And that was 2.5 months of really intense work in Tokyo. And during that period of time, we connected with many large Japanese corporations and international corporations and across many different silos and industries. And so that was a huge vote of confidence in Platin by the Japanese government, by the Tokyo government. And that really opened many doors for Platin. One of them actually resulted in us raising in May 2018, earlier this year, $1.5 million in seed funding.
That's excellent.
Which, yeah, again, it was a huge vote of confidence in our team and the technology and the vision at Platin. And the next big milestone ahead of us is our TGE, October 28th, and we're full gear ahead towards that date. And we are planning many different releases, as Lionel mentioned, around zero knowledge proofs, around our partnership with the W3C, our yellow paper.
Yeah. So the zero knowledge proof piece is something that is it currently functioning, or it's functioning to some extent, and then you've got to really build it out more once you've launched the token?
With things like this, you need to share the math so that people understand that, can double check you, and share working code. So we have both of those that we're going to release, and these are reflected in that simple statement there, Platin Pocket Beta. So we already have functioning internally a wallet integration. We have escrow contracts on Ethereum transferring money when you pick up the asset. We have visualization of assets. So really, the distance between what we have working now, we have working code internally, and what we release has to do with full testing, getting it all licensed properly, and then sharing it with our community. So that's why we're kind of going in this step-by-step manner, because also we want to keep tracking what the standard that we're promoting, which is called the verifiable claims standard. But as Alon just pointed out, this is where my passion and I love good engineering, and I want you to know I've been lucky to be involved in a lot of projects, and the Platin team is really exceptional. We have exceptional people you can scroll down. We recently all got them into Platin t-shirts.
I think we might actually want to spend just 30 seconds or a minute on what zero knowledge is, because it really is powerful technology and it's got tremendous innovation in there. And earlier, Lionel mentioned Professor Eli Beham, who basically wrote the zero knowledge. I think it was ZK Snarks.
No, you're confusing Sassone with Beham, but that's okay. Beham does the cryptanalysis. Sassone actually did.
Oh, Eli Ben Sassone, that's right. I'm sorry. Eli Ben Sassone wrote ZK Snarks or Starks. I always confuse the two for Zcash. And so I think it's worth spending a minute on describing what zero knowledge is.
Absolutely.
I could go ahead and do that. In my words, basically, it allows you to ascertain that you're within a specifically predefined area or location without revealing the exact coordinates of where you are. So you can state that you are within the state of California without revealing your exact latitude and longitude coordinates, whether you're in San Francisco, LA, or in the middle of the desert. And there's tremendous value around that kind of behavior when you're dealing with geofencing currencies and creating behavior that's broader and more privacy preserving to users of Platin technology, indirectly even.
Yeah,
so
it's like if I ask you to pick a number between 1 and 100, well, we pick a card out of the deck, right? And I don't know what card you picked. But with pick a card, I know you have one card from the deck because I saw you take it.
Yeah.
So we call this a range proof, range of cards, and you have one of them. I don't know which one you have, but I know you have one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You following?
Yeah.
So range proofs are pretty well established, and they've stood up to a lot of attacks. They work well. So we've taken a range proof. Now, just the difference with the cards is like if I did say to you, Ryan, pick a number from 1 to 0 from 100. Go ahead with that. Pick a number from 0 to 100.
Okay.
Did you do it?
Yep.
See, now, I don't really know if you did. You might have picked 3,000, which is not in the range.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Now, with zero knowledge cleverness, and it's quite clever, and it's really beautiful, you would have a way of making what we call a commitment. You would give me a commitment, and it doesn't say what number you, but prove without a shadow of a doubt that your number is between 0 and 100. So we call that a range proof. So what
without revealing the number to anyone.
That's right.
Without revealing the number. You get a true false.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So what we're doing now is taking areas. We started with a circle, which is the simplest area. Mm-hmm. And we then go to triangles. And once you've got a triangle, you can make any shape at all.
Right.
And we basically make a range proof. So this is very exciting because some of our partners are doing regional currency coins, and they would like to support tax-free areas and areas with higher tax rates.
Absolutely.
So using Platin's range proof, you can define a boundary.
Yeah.
This is the boundary of my country. This is the boundary of my tax-free zone. And then you provide a commitment. And if your commitment reveals you're in the boundary, that's it. You don't pay tax.
Yeah. Well, quick plug for a future video. I actually have plans to bring on a project called TaxMap, which is specifically looking to work with regulators to help various applications of using cryptocurrency for banking and accounting to be able to facilitate easy compliance for tax regulations based on location. So I actually had a thought in mind to introduce you guys to him or them when I get the opportunity. And it's a perfect example of the kind of project that would potentially rely on your technology.
Yeah, location data is just so critical all the time, and we've become accustomed to feeling that it's private, and it's just because of how it was built and because the incentives for the World Wide Web until today were just take all your data. And that's finally, there's just a huge backlash against that. The GDPR, the notices you see now on the web.
Yeah.
Do you click them, Ryan? I click them. And
what is it? The GDPR?
Yeah. The GDPR
most of the time I don't actually. Occasionally I do as I'm not paying attention, but most of the time I actually click out of them and I don't accept them.
So I already warned you, I'm a privacy fanatic. So if you click, they then get you to a place where you can say, I accept analytics, but I don't accept tracking cookies. They actually give you 3 on and off buttons. There is no reason why we should consent to being tracked. Now, there are certain layers of the internet that require somebody to know your location, like your cell company.
Mm-hmm.
The cell system has to know what tower you're
Right.
talking to.
Get emergency alerts or something like that.
But there's no reason why every restaurant in town you for the rest of your life just because you downloaded their loyalty app, and Platin helps solve those problems.
Awesome, awesome. In fact, we also passed some blockchain legislation this year in Vermont, which includes a personal data protection company designation, so that any company of any form in this state could establish itself to represent itself as holding personal data of its clients in fiduciary responsibility. So the idea of this being that any usage of that content needs to be accurately accounted and reported, therefore monetization needs to be accounted and reported, and that opens up a whole market for competition and more transparency of the process of what's being kept, what's not being kept, how it's being utilized, and more importantly, opening the door to use blockchain to actually offset the liability of that fiduciary by putting the customer data into a place where they don't even actually have direct control or access over it. They're just facilitating that reporting, accounting, and monetization if desired by the consumer. And so I'm very optimistic that there are movements in the right direction that are helping consumers learn how to use this stuff, but also areas where we're sort of pushing the commercial side to simply open those doors and designate themselves or hold themselves to a higher bar, a higher standard. So I'm really excited to explore how that works, and especially how we can maybe get you guys involved in some of those pilot projects.
That sounds really great. Yeah, thank you for that connection.
Yeah. So what are some of the use cases? I'm going to pull up. You've got that on one of these pages here. Yeah, here we go. So let's get into some of the details. Like, what are some of the use cases that you guys are currently exploring and have maybe found some partnerships in?
Click the second one. That's my favorite.
Okay, sure. Yeah, just a second.
Actually, mine too. The humanitarian airdrops.
Humanitarian airdrops. Awesome.
We think that's going to make a really strong impact around the world, and this allows you to send money to any location in the world. A lot of locations are stricken by disaster and require help from different aid organizations and governments.
Well, hey, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I have to cite this detail. I was just listening to the BBC on my way back from New York the other day, and they're talking about this Malaysian tsunami, and we've got, it took 5 days for us to get equipment there, and so like there's not even a chance of trying to recover or rescue people. It's just a recovery mission because we can't even get the equipment there in time. And it's all, honestly, so much of this is held back by the bureaucracy and the friction in systems that, if people know that when they show up, they're paid, it just eliminates a whole lot of friction in actually moving resources and getting them to where they need to be. So right. That's really exciting. Sorry to continue that.
So
but that story is just it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's true. And every month there's some other disaster, whether it's Puerto Rico, Mexico, Indonesia, Japan. I mean, it's just we're susceptible to what's happening with climate change, and there are also like man-made disasters, unfortunately. And a lot of countries and even individuals are making a big effort to try to help people in these areas. And with Platin, what you can do is actually send money to location and have people on location, pick up whatever you're sending it to them. So it can be any type of crypto asset or any type of digital asset. So imagine, you can send a fraction of a Bitcoin to some far off place in Africa or Asia, or any place on the map for that matter. Or you can even send a document that describes how to purify water. So again, any digital asset, and anyone at that location can claim that. And you will be able to know that asset that you airdropped there was claimed. Was claimed by someone who we know for a fact was on the ground over there. And we are in talks with the Swiss Red Cross and ISRA-Aid and other international aid organizations, not so much about bypassing them, but about working together with them in helping people of these areas who really require help. And we think that that's a real game changer.
I agree, and I think there's a there's a new problem with humanitarian aid in that, you know, and that's another thing that was being talked about, is that people are becoming desensitized to it because we have so many disasters, and then we have this, you know, one fundraising, and then that sort of, you know, goes to the wayside when the next one comes up. And ultimately, there's a lack of trust in some of these organizations and what they're going to do in the long run, because then we have the history of, we look at Haiti, which was years ago now, and you know, we have more NGOs in Haiti than people. And you look at orphanages around the world, and a lot of the orphanages in third world countries have as much as 70% of the kids in there have parents living locally. The only reason the kid's in the orphanage is because it saves the expense on the parent, and it also is a lottery ticket. The parents basically just crossing their fingers, hoping that their kid gets adopted by some American or some rich family somewhere, and they have a better life because of it. And you know, ultimately,
that's a really interesting point, and there are a lot of unfortunate instances like that. But we think that it's not only so much a matter of corruption as it is just a matter of efficiency or lack thereof. So you know, we're speaking to these aid organizations, and they're opening their books to us and revealing their numbers, and they're basically telling us, listen, you know, 20 cents on the dollar of every dollar that's donated actually ends up on location for the person who really needs it. So
right.
There's operations, and there's different intermediary organizations and different distributors, and each person or organization takes a cut because, you know, they need to pay their salaries, and they have cost of goods sold, and with Platin you could, you know, make sure that 100% of your donation actually ends up at the region or with a person who needs it. So we think that what humanitarian aid organizations are doing is vital. It's extremely important.
Absolutely, and not to work. Yeah, I don't want to disparage the organizations, and I wasn't even actually alluding to corruption, though I'm sure there is some there. I think it's just really, it's a systemic failure, right? It's that 20 cents on the dollar that, you know, when you actually step back and look at it, you go, whoa, wait a minute, like we're missing something here in terms of actually doing what we're intending to do, and getting closer, you know, bringing those two things closer together between what the desire is of the donor and what the need is on the other end is really where these technologies start to bring us together. And those organizations still have a role in educating their heavy donors, in facilitating the people receiving the aid and the best, you know, usage and understanding of how to benefit from that. But there, it's ultimately, it's that, you know, fat protocols and thinner applications. The application in my mind in that example is the NGOs and these organizations, and they're going to need to get thinner and be more of a facilitator and less of like the underlying protocol. And
right. So that's very true what you're saying. Fatter protocols and thinner apps. That's absolutely true. But with Platin, we really think that the magic comes into the ability to program the behavior based on location. And so what you see these four pink, if you go back to the humanitarian airdrops, you see these four bullets. So there's no waste, no hoarding. It's fair. You can actually program how it's going to be claimed into the smart contract of that airdrop. So you could say, you know, it has to be done with a trusted node.
So you could say this is for food, water, and shelter, and they wouldn't be able to go and, you know, swap it for, you know, whatever, like anything else in the ecosystem, really.
Correct. And you could also limit it, so you have like X claims per wallet, or you would have to have a trusted node that could be from a Swiss Red Cross representative or a Red Cross representative or someone on the ground. And you could also say that in terms of no hoarding or no waste, that if any airdrop remains unclaimed because it happened to have been airdropped in the middle of you know, like a river or a lake or something that's inaccessible, then it will revert back to your wallet within X days. And so you have all these behaviors that can be programmed into how exactly my donation is claimed. And so that's the humanitarian use case.
Right. And
we're really excited about it.
Yeah, and in the sense that, you know, you can't expect a bunch of people to have cell phones in a disaster area. You can have all kinds of creative implementations where, you know, you have your sort of aid workers out there and maybe community members that get empowered to, you know, get a hold of a piece of technology that they can then go collect the airdrops. But then these incentives that to not hoard, that say, you know, hey, well, you know, these are really good for the next 3 weeks. You know, spend it on feeding as many people as you can, on housing as many people as you can, and you know, even create incentives to actually give those people some kind of longer term reward after the disaster is all recovered and there's a record of their participation based on that activity. I think it's really, really powerful, because that allows us to identify the leaders in the community that otherwise go unseen, because you have these NGOs and you have their employees, but oftentimes it's overlooked that like the real boots on the ground and the hard work is done by the local the local priest, or the local mother or father who is looking out for people and really helps to bring those things together and handle the communication and all of that. So it's really exciting to have the opportunity to give people credit for their their participation.
Yeah, I like to compare systems are systems, whether they're people or machines. And, the automobile is also only 20% efficient. However much gas you put in, you only turn about 20%, if you're lucky, into forward motion. So the large aid organizations that have their frictions because they're machines in this way. And we're not saying that that's incorrect. What we are saying is as machines develop, they swap out certain parts to become more efficient. And our partners, like Alon said, we're talking to the Swiss Red Cross because they're very innovative. They have a head of digital innovation. And IsraAid, which is the organization that you read about without actually seeing their name. They're the ones who travel in and they find people buried under rubble. They have that whole Israeli mentality of fast deployment. They're really amazing.
Awesome.
And so at least with this, they can reduce that part of the friction, and like you said, then people would have more trust in these machines and these organizations that they just do good from morning to night. And we just want to give them another protocol, as you said,
absolutely,
to make things work faster.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is reinstating trust in institutions, not just in the brand and the label, as we've come to, we sort of have this crutch of like, oh, I recognize that brand, I'll trust that. But we really want people to sort of have that extra hitch of like, why do I trust this, right? And for them to know why they trust it, I think is the key. And that enables people to share that understanding and knowledge. People to look to third parties if they don't understand something, to look to a third party that gives a valid reason for trusting an agency. And we can start to filter out either, whether it's corruption or inefficiency or simply redundancy, and we can bring those things together in a way that allows us to really channel confidence and capital into the challenges that really need to be addressed.
That's good.
So trust the protocol.
Exactly. I say all the time that we're turning bank from a noun to a verb.
Oh, that's good.
Bank the unbanked, right?
That's right. That's right. It's all about, what do I bank? I mean, if I talk about I got to move next week and I'm banking on my buddies to help me out, right? It's a verb. It's something we do in real time, in action, and that's what that's what I think blockchain and decentralized ledger systems allow for, is for us to understand that a system serves us, serves a purpose, and we're relying on it. We're trusting that, and these banks and other entities become service providers that help us utilize those services, but they ultimately start to take on a different kind of role as a consultant or advisor or facilitator. So
there's PS2, which is revolutionizing banking as well, and they're going to have to share more of their financial information and decentralize it. So a location sharing protocol that Platin is promoting and enables will enable these proofs of residence and KYC claims and all that to have a lot less friction as well.
And it's funny too, because one of the things you said about the zero knowledge proofs, right, is we talk about privacy and private blockchains versus public blockchains, private transactions versus public transactions. It's really interesting because there's a lot of push from banks to have private transactions. They say because they're clients, they need to have that privacy. And at the end of the day, I think that one of the things that blockchain brings to the space is brings to our world is the ability for consumers to select who they do business with based on how transparently they operate. But the other thing that's interesting that you mentioned is that without knowing the exact answer, we can ascertain a range. And so even if these activities are becoming private, by comparing what is private and what we know of that activity to what is transparent and what we know of that activity, we can start to come to conclusions about where the capital power and wealth is being deployed, even if we don't know the amount in a particular transaction or who's on either end of it. I mean, we could still all be detectives, right? And there's a balance there between privacy and just real world ability to ascertain facts and knowledge, and then pursue solving corruption or improving or making bureaucracy more efficient. I think that there's a big open world there that is exciting to see when we have the opportunity to hold really everyone accountable in terms of who has power and capital.
I think that's you kind of laid out the two extremes. On one end, we need privacy, the exact amount that I spent and when, that's private. Mm-hmm. On the other side, as a community, we need to understand what's happening in our community. And these are two poles that really drive our innovation. And I think that there's an overall reaction. There's just been too much invasion of privacy, and we're getting a pull towards the other end. And zero knowledge is the key, one key to have these kinds of range proofs, which I described to you. And there are other tricks that we can do. And then as you move between the poles with what we call progressive trust. So we should start with minimum data, zero knowledge. And that should suffice for many transactions. And when you have a relationship and you wish to reveal more, then you can reveal more in the context of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, hey, I don't want to creep too far up on the hour here. I really appreciate your guys' time. I really appreciate all of you out there watching this. I think this is, you guys are an amazing project and a real key to the revolution that is happening with blockchain and cryptocurrency. And so I'm really excited to watch where it goes. And I want to encourage everyone, go to the Platin website, read up on it, get some more information there, possibly participate in the TGE, and keep learning. It's an exciting world. So thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much,
Ryan. And bring more people from your community interested in compliance and regulation. Those are really important parts of the puzzle. So it was really good to interact with you. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.